Welcome to another edition of Journey of Hope. Stories of people that have come to Loma Linda and experienced wholeness, hope, and healing. Our special guest today is Robert Carlson, an individual originally from Germany, most recently from Texas, an artist, very creative individual, but a person who was confronted with the words, "You have cancer." Robert, it's good to have you here.
Thank you very much for having me.
Journey of Hope.
Thank
We
you.
got people from around the world that are watching, and we want to learn a little bit about your background and where you're from and how you got involved in being an artist. So tell me where you got started.
Started is as early as I can remember, just a massive desire to want to draw and paint. And as a child, it was all I thought about. Every chance, every opportunity, I would draw, and I think I wasn't very good then, but it was practice and just this driving desire to want to be able to represent what I saw and represent it well, and I never gave up.
So from the earliest memories, you remember doodling and drawing. Now, where were you raised? Where did you grow up? Where did you go to school?
First 7 years in Germany, and then my father is in the American military and brought us to United States and right to El Paso in 1959. And then went through school there, and then after school back to Germany.
Now, why did you go back to Germany after school?
I felt...
It was after high school.
Yes, I felt uprooted. I guess my German soul was calling to me, and the irony was when I went back, and I felt strongly that I belonged in Germany, and when I went back, I felt totally out of place. And I spent a few years there.
So you went back there the latter in 59? Is that when you went back?
No, I went back in 69.
You went back in 69, okay.
Right, and as a teenager, and thought that I was...
And did you go back on your own?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You finished high school and went back, and you're going to discover the world and be on your own and make it big. And
exactly. And I sold literally everything I owned here to have a ticket, and I got off the plane in Germany with about $5, which...
In Germany with $5.
And
you're going to start the new life.
Right, and that seemed to be okay. Obviously, I hadn't thought it through too clearly, but I went down to my hometown, and my uncle got me a job as a cook and baker's apprentice in a 5-star hotel and restaurant, and I did that for a year, and it was a lot of fun as a young fellow doing this. And
looking back on it, or even while you were there?
I think more so looking back. Right. Your memory becomes a little selective as you age, and I don't remember a bad moment.
Very selective. Yes. All right. So you're working. Were you as a baker, or what were you doing?
In all aspects in the kitchen.
Okay.
I was in literally a cook, baker,
doing it all.
Doing it all, and even at times working in the restaurant itself, and working as what we called an étage cook. We would do some cooking in the rooms for people staying at the hotel.
I mean, did you see this as an opportunity of growing and developing and pursuing this as a career, or was this just kind of a stopgap?
I think it was a little bit of both, but mostly it was the job that was handed to me.
It was a survival thing.
It was. Okay. And I still thought a lot about painting, and I was.
Now, you'd actually thought about painting as a career, as a profession at this point?
Well, at that point, it was more thinking about, is it even possible to make it a career? I had this idea that you couldn't just want to be an artist, that you had to have some special anointing, and that somehow, I didn't necessarily get the flyer.
You didn't get the certificate, or didn't get the acknowledgement, or didn't.
Right.
The bells weren't rung, and the graduation didn't take place.
Right. Exactly. And so I really did not understand that it was something that you could just arbitrarily choose to try. And that didn't mean that you could succeed, but that you could choose to try. And when it was virtually impossible at that time in Europe for me to try and take that step and live there and try to live as a young starting artist. There was a real different mentality in America, and I ended up coming back to the States largely so to try it here. And
I mean, did you try anything? We talk about trying. You'd been apparently drawing and painting
yes.
over the years and through high school, and now you're out of high school and you're over there in Germany. I mean, you were doing some painting at that time?
Yes, mostly drawing and dry media.
Okay.
And I went to galleries. I spoke to agents and galleries and whatnot, and they not necessarily always kindly told me to come back after I had a few more years' experience. And I think I remember even being told by one that I just wasn't good enough.
Weren't cut out.
Yeah.
You didn't have it.
Yeah, and which I'm sure you could imagine just really pretty much irritated me.
Oh, it must have been crushing.
It was awful. I was depressed for weeks over it. But
This is a dream that you had, and the people that should know are telling you you can't do it.
Yeah,
You don't have it. Think of
don't.
something else.
yeah, go, keep cooking.
So, I mean, at this point, did you have any professional lessons?
No, I'm totally self-taught.
You're totally self-taught.
Yes,
So you come back to the United States then, because the doors are closing over there in Germany. What happens when you come back?
I started, I jumped into it pretty quickly and started painting. And actually, my first set of paints were given to me by a friend.
You talk about the bottles of paint and the cans of paint?
The tubes, yes.
The tubes of paint.
I'd literally never worked with paint of any kind.
With oils.
This was totally new to me. And the friend managed a little hotel in El Paso, and his wife had been to all the best art schools in the country, and she was the artist in the group, but by her definition, not very good. And she had seen the stuff that I drew all the time, and I was at that point to help sort of support my intent. I was lifeguarding at their hotel, which is how we met, and they gave me a room in the hotel, and she loaned me easel and paints and said, "You need to do this." And the first thing that happened is I fell in love with the smell of oil paint.
This is your first time really working with
Yes,
oils?
it really was.
Okay.
And it was the smell that was intoxicating to me. It was such a neat smell, linseed oil, paint. It was just something quite unique. I'd not smelled it before, and there was something very attractive about it. And I hadn't a clue what I was doing, but I just did it somewhat instinctively. And the first painting I did, I gave to my parents as a Christmas gift that year, which my mother still has. And it was virtually a black and white painting because it was a night scene of a tree silhouetted with a full moon behind the tree. So there was very little color in the painting anywhere. So I was still mentally sort of working in black and white, but with paint, and the paint was fun.
Brought it to life then.
It did. It was it had a dimension and a feel that I'd not experienced before, and I was hooked. That was it.
That's when you got started. Okay, well, I'm going to take a look at one of your pictures here, and you tell us what we're looking at, and give a description of. There's more to the eye than what you really see here.
This is titled Passion Red,
Okay.
and one of the most important aspects of what I do from a creative perspective is that there are two things I want to happen. One, I want to pull the viewer in and let the viewer have an experience where they are trying to make a judgment about what's going on in the painting rather than me tell them. So in other words, the image would be very clear. You can clearly see it's a nun, and she's sitting and she's painting her nails red. But it's up to you to decide what the intent is, what the meaning behind that is.
You're pulling the person into the artwork
Yes.
then, okay?
And I think that's a really important aspect of, it's an important aspect of my direction in my work. I want it to be, on a certain level, to be participatory. And this is the ideal piece to illustrate that.
Oh, yeah, I got another one here. Comment on this one.
Okay, this was this is titled Kate, and she's a young girl in El Paso that her grandparents commissioned this portrait, and the original painting, she's life-size, and they commissioned the portrait as a gift to their son and daughter, the parents of the child. And I'm actually very fond of the painting. It's because what I like to do with portraits, or what I try to do with portraits, I should say, is present more than just what a person looks like. I think it's important for the viewer to be able to experience a sense of the feeling and the personality of the person that you might not experience by just looking at a picture of them or looking at their face. And I think that with this, you can see she's a little bit timid, and she's a sweet girl. And so it was the attempt to bring those things across.
And you presented it then. And this one?
Okay, and now this piece was, the name of the piece is kind of fun too. This is Loverboy, Trouble, and Rosie.
Right.
And those are the names of all the dogs. And I do something in El Paso to help the Humane Society, and in conjunction with a winery there, we auction off for the Humane Society a portrait of the person, the buyer's animal, dog or cat.
Whichever.
Even if they had a ferret, we'd do it too. But and then we reproduced the portrait of the dog onto wine labels that the vineyard produces, and they do a limited number. And the name of the wine is called Man's Best Friend, and the proceeds all go to the Humane Society.
So it's a charity, kind of a charity thing.
And so I do a lot of dog portraits as a result of that, and this one is one of my favorites. It's just...
Okay, so you finally, and I've seen the book of your art, and you've been doing this for how many years now?
About 37 full-time.
37 years full-time. So everything's going fine. Your business is beginning to grow and develop, and I've seen this book of art that you've had, so obviously you've been doing this for many, many years, been very successful, things are going well for you, and then you get the word you have cancer. What happened?
I have also been somewhat athletic most of my life. I've done the Ironman triathlon 3 times.
Now, repeat that again, because sometimes the audience doesn't understand.
Okay. In 1988, 89, and 90, I did the Ironman triathlon.
That's in Hawaii.
In Hawaii, the World Championship, yes.
Okay.
And
that's a full, how many miles swimming?
Okay, it's 2.4 miles swimming, 112 miles biking, and 26.2 mile run. Okay. After you've warmed up.
So you did this 3 times.
Yes.
All right.
And so 20 years later, or actually a couple of years ago, I told my wife Rosie that it would be neat to go back, do it one more time, because I basically retired from the sport around 91, 92. And so it'd be fun to go back and experience this on my 20th anniversary of the first time I did the race. So I started training again. I lost 50 pounds, and in the process, I did a little test race, a half Ironman race, and I couldn't recover. I was having a horrible time. I was severely fatigued. I was having a lot of issues that made no sense, and I'd done this for so many years that there was nothing vague to me about what was going on. There was something wrong, and I called a friend of mine that's a general practitioner doctor and said, let's do some tests. I need to find something out. And he did, and the first call, when he called and said, we got the tests back, and cholesterol's a little high, this and that, all of these are fine, but here's a bad number. He said, last year your PSA was 1.1, and this year, now it's 4.7, I think, at the time.
So it jumped significantly.
Yeah, and he said, you need to have this tested right away. You need to get a biopsy and whatever. And after the biopsy, they said, yes, you have cancer. And I'm a bit of a research nut. I don't go into anything
half-heartedly
or lightly. so I started researching, and everything that the doctor had said had, shocked me silly. There's no way.
Some of the side effects and the problems that are associated with it.
The treatments were just, to my thinking, they were insane. I couldn't imagine how anybody would willingly opt for those. And so I started researching. I said, there's got to be better answers than this. And the proton treatment popped up fairly quickly. And then virtually in the same motion, a friend gave me a little stack of books, and one of the books was a book by Bob Marchini.
Sure.
And when I put everything else aside and read that book, and was well before I was halfway through the book, I was sold on not just that book but Loma Linda, and the whole body concept and the sense of spirituality that he was describing in the book sold me, that I've got to try and come here. And I went online the next day and emailed Loma Linda and asked for a consult, and got it. And then, we were here before I knew it.
So you came to Loma Linda, you completed your treatments. Tell me about your experience here at Loma Linda, and you're being an artist. I mean, what are you going to do during this period of time? I'm assuming this is the way you support yourself.
Yes.
Okay.
And I can't afford not to be painting. So
okay.
There was it was the idea of 2.5 months away from home was a little shocking, but I had the good fortune of having a sister that lives up the road from here, and she offered to put me up, and I brought a sort of a temporary studio. And in joking around with my wife at one point, I said, in order to pay for all this, we're going to either have to have a bake sale or a car wash. And we laughed, and that was that. But that night I woke up and I said, God, this is really not a bad idea. I'm going to paint a bake sale. And in essence, the idea initially was to take the names of baked goods and create a fun painting around the idea. And then something happened that I can't explain more than, when my brain gets to work, it has
right.
It has its own momentum. And by that point, the real sense of spirituality of Loma Linda was starting to take over.
It's making an impact on you.
Yeah, more than just a little one. And the first painting that I started mentally developing, was a piece that I called Angel Food Cake. And the
angel food cake, because of the baked goods idea. Right. Angel food cake, okay.
Right, and so I thought, what would be, the fun thing how to represent angel food cake, and then furthermore, how does it work in with Loma Linda? And it was actually pretty obvious. And I have always thought that the best ideas are always obvious, and Angel Food Cake came out of it, and that is the one painting that I did in my time here. And I think...
okay, we're going to look at that painting, but when you talk about Angel Food Cake, and you're talking about spirituality and the impact that Loma Linda comes on you, what are some of the ingredients that go into this?
Well, I think that the first impact now these may sound like simple things, but I think they're enormous and tremendous. The first thing that happened to us here, we came and used the valet parking at Loma Linda, and the gentlemen were really friendly and very, very considerate and courteous. And the second day we came, they asked the first day, what is your name, please, and write it down on the card. And the second day, I drove up before I even had the car door open, and we didn't wear no name tags, just me. The young man had the door open and said, "Mr. Carlson, it's good to see you again." I was shocked by that. That was, because that was, in a way, that's such a little thing, and yet it's such a big thing.
Identified, called you by name.
He called me by name, and each person that we met, each person that we talked to, in every aspect of the center, and virtually all my dealings are in the Proton Center, from the receptionists who are just, they are absolute angels. And now...
So this is making an impact
Yes.
on you, and
Now-
it's beginning to form in your mind.
Right, and now I'm sewing this all up for you. I don't care how you define it, whether you use the word spirituality, people of an immense spirituality, or if you call them angels. I think any one of these terms would be comfortably applied to literally every person that I have met here. I have never in my life been as affected by a body of people performing their jobs with a compassion and a care, and yet still, and it's vitally important because I think it's a real difficult line to walk, and yet still totally professional. They're the best I've ever seen. And
well, I'm so glad that kind of an impact was made. We're going to take a look at our last slide here, and see if we can spot it. There we are. Now, there it is. This is your angel food cake. This is what was, how long did this take to paint?
It took my entire stay here, my 10 weeks, my 2.5 months. And granted, I had a difficult time getting started at first because it was just some sense of being uprooted and trying to settle into the rhythm and all here. But I was really driven. I felt driven to do this painting and have it done by the time I finished here. It was very important to me. I wanted something that really represented my experience here and that spoke to my feelings about Loma Linda, as well as tied into this entire experience, and at the same time was still upbeat and a little fun.
Tell us what we see in the picture.
Okay, obviously this is a young girl and young angel, and she's eating angel food cake.
There's the angel food cake.
Right. And there's one small note I'll throw in about this painting too. We showed it at one of the potluck dinners on Tuesday evening of the Proton group, and a number of people came up to me and said, this looks just like this young girl at the Drayson Center. They said she's, and I believe her name is Wendy. And they said, it looks like Wendy at the Drayson Center. And I said, well, it was not intended to look like Wendy at the Drayson Center. And the other day, and every day I go to the Drayson Center, and the other day Rosie and I stopped and talked to her, and I told her, I said, I did a painting. She said, "Oh, you're the one." She said, I've heard about it.
Word had come back
She
to
had
her.
been told a number of times by people that she was in a painting. So I took her a photo of the painting, gave it to her just yesterday or this morning.
Yeah, and I understand one of the patients actually did purchase the painting.
And they felt, I was thrilled that not only did they purchase the painting, but the reasons that they purchased the painting was that it was such a strong emotional connection to them, to Loma Linda, and their feelings also about the angelic quality of this place. I think it just, again, it harkens back to the whole idea. It's not just me. It's not just a single person, individual's experience. It's the same experience I've heard over and over and over again from all these people. Every single person that I've talked to that has come here, and which is the other part of this package that is fascinating to me, is that the spirituality that exists here, it drips on everybody that walks into the place. It oozes onto them, and nobody can leave here without being affected.
Well, I'm glad. We've only got a minute and a half left here. What difference is having cancer going to make to you?
I will tell you that I'm going to forget I've ever had cancer, and I'm probably going to forget that fairly soon. It's going to have no effect on my life. But what will have an effect on my life is Loma Linda.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. And I know that it's going to be reflected in your paintings. And I know that you had a dream. You were telling me about pursuing something and painting a picture really that may have some ramifications, implications for doing research here in the future. Just quickly tell me what you had in mind.
Well, there's a camaraderie and a brotherhood amongst all the men who have this cancer, and we're in dressing rooms together each morning putting on gowns, the hospital gowns, and I'm working in the preliminary stages of a piece that would represent both them and the proton center, as it were, and it's a group of guys. I haven't decided on the final number, but it might be 7, it might be 50, but all in their hospital gowns and socks, standing all very happy and content. And
it's going to be called The Brotherhood.
The Brotherhood, yes.
And I want to thank you so much, Robert, for joining us here on Journey of Hope. And I know that God's got plans for you and for your future. And I know that your artwork is going to have an impact upon the research in the very future and the future development of what goes on here at Loma Linda. For those of you that are watching, I am Lynn Martell for Journey of Hope. We want to thank you for joining our program. And Robert is, again, just one of the illustrations of patients that have been treated here. Thank you for watching. Join us again next week as we interview another patient impacted by Loma Linda.